This week on Movies, baby, we have a new #1 movie at the box office, Warner Brothers' Mickey 17. But why isn't the House of Barbie that's Warner Brothers celebrating? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll dig into Warner Brothers' so-called auteur strategy for 2025, which involves giving boatloads of money to some of our finest filmmakers. It's a win for audiences, but is it a win for WB as well? We'll talk about that. But first, let's take a look at the numbers. Carson, show me the money. And by money, I of course mean the weekend box office returns, baby.
Bang.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
There they are. Well, Joe.
We got a new #1, Brett.
We got a new #1. Mickey 17 brought in $19.1 million domestically, dethroning Marvel's Captain America Brave New World for the top spot. But unfortunately, that $19.1 million domestically is just 16% of its reported $118 million production budget. Now, it did bring in $53 million total when you count the international markets, but that is still a long way to go to profit. It needs to bring in about $275 million, at least $275 million total in gross revenue to see profit when you count in the marketing spend and everything. That is going to be a long hill to climb for Mickey 17 with this soft $19 million domestic opening. So, Joe, I think unfortunately we have to consider Mickey 17 a flop. Everyone saw it coming, and now it's happened. What happened here? Why did Mickey 17 flop? What went wrong here?
Mickey 17 flopped domestically because Bong Joon-ho is from South Korea. And I think that's one of the core issues with the movie Mickey 17 is though it's for an American audience and Bong is a really smart, sharp guy, he's still not quite from here. So some of the nuances are a little broad, in my opinion, with the movie, but I think that also translates over to his stateside appeal financially. In South Korea, Bong Joon-ho's the opposite of a slouch. He's like the highest grossing South Korean filmmaker ever. All of his movies do tremendously well. Parasite, I think, is the #1 all-time movie in the South Korean box office, and Parasite won Best Picture here, and it was a huge international wave. But what us cinephiles kind of need to get through our head, I suppose, is that doesn't mean Bong is, Tom Cruise. He alone can't open a movie. Putting from the director of Parasite above it, you can make $20 million at the box office. I just think it's like a name recognition thing. I think we know who Bong is, and we love Bong, and Parasite is a huge deal for us. But these are different times, and movie theaters aren't the main cultural epicenter, and Bong's influence isn't felt through American culture as pervasively as other directors or auteurs. I'm afraid it's as simple as that. And additionally, Mr. Pattinson is also not to blame, but he's the other guy who's the name. He is famous here. He is Batman. He is a movie star. He is beautiful and young, and he can't open the movie either. It's a big, beautiful sci-fi romp comedy thing. People act like everything that's not IP is hard to market. Everything that's not Superman, how are we ever going to sell it? It's like, I don't know, big, broad, beautiful sci-fi comedy seems like relatively straightforward. I don't think, Zaslav famously is not really into marketing 150%.
David Zaslav, head of Warner Brothers Discovery. Yep.
So, I think that they probably gave it a nice little run. They bumped this thing. They kind of killed it culturally.
Yeah, well,
it's a Trump send-up, but Trump just got elected again. They just pushed and pushed and pushed this thing.
Let's dig into that real quick because, everything you're saying is correct. In order to open a Bong Joon-ho movie with Robert Pattinson as big as they needed to open this, they would have had to nail the pre-production, the marketing strategy. Every step of it would have had to been so precise and nailed, and they really didn't do that. They didn't do themselves any favors by originally this was slated to come out last year, but they pushed it because it was coinciding with the writers' strike, the various strikes, and they just didn't think the timing was right to get the right marketing push behind it. So this thing was delayed over a year. The trailers were never quite there, the marketing was never quite there. They didn't.
Warner Brothers insists, and their marketing suggests that they didn't get this movie. They didn't get it. All of the words for why they bumped it is that tonally it was confusing to them. And I watched the movie. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece at all, but I certainly is clear. It's a sci-fi comedy romp on like an epic scale with Batman as the main picture. It just doesn't seem like an impossibility. Though it's not based on IP, people are familiar with the tropes of sci-fi. You know, like Mickey 17 has a lot of Alien in it. It's got a lot of The Thing in it. You know, it's got a lot of Star Wars, the one with the snow in it. You know, the new one. The one with Rian Johnson's. So, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's an impossible thing to push on American audiences. I think WB kicked it to death, put it in March, said, I don't get Bong, whatever. Maybe it'll just magically hit. And it didn't magically hit. That doesn't exist.
And so this thing must have gotten greenlit in the wake of Parasite, but then they kind of like, because they botched the rollout, the post-production of it, the release date of it, they could no longer capitalize on the sort of Parasite, you know, publicity or Parasite wave, because they clearly didn't make any effort. They didn't market this as like a Bong Joon-ho movie. They didn't market this as a from the director of Parasite movie. They mainly led with Robert Pattinson, which I think is smart in the marketing, but they didn't clearly communicate what this movie was, what the, like you said, what the genre was, what the kind of mood of it was. They couldn't find that one like clear viral marketing sort
Like
of through line or narrative for this movie, and so it just never gained any sort of momentum. Everyone in my theater was well attended and everyone liked it, but this is we're in LA, it's all of the like, you know, sort of diehard movie lovers, so but that's kind of, you know, what happens. You had to like seek this movie out, find out what it was about. You had to do the work as an audience member to kind of get excited about this movie. Warner Brothers wasn't doing a whole lot of work to get people excited about it.
It's a movie where Robert Pattinson prints himself out over and over again. Like the memes write themselves, and it just didn't happen. And Warner Brothers did a bad job.
And apparently, Robert Pattinson based his accent, because, you know, he always does his crazy accents. He based his accent in the movie on Steve-O. Maybe that could have been something. I don't know.
Yeah, just like a fun video, anything.
You
right?
know what social media is like,
yeah.
right? That could have been a fun thing
been
that
a
kind of
thing.
like circulated. But I found out about that like in the middle of the weekend while the movie was already out. I don't know. They just didn't really figure out how to market or present this movie, and as a result, you know, it bombed. It might have bombed anyway with that budget. But it certainly did without like a real coherent, strong marketing effort behind it. And when you look at Warner Brothers' slate for this year, I want to talk about what this means for Warner Brothers this year, because Warner Brothers has two things going on. And we're getting 2 years removed from Barbie, 2 years removed from, you know, the last sort of colossal cultural moment coming out of Warner Brothers. They did have Dune 2 last year, but, you know, I mean, Barbie was mega otherworldly. So we're now 2 years out from that. They've got James Gunn's Superman in the summer is obviously the big one that everything is riding on. That is kind of the rebrand of the DC extended universe, and they have a lot banking on that. But then they also have all of these expensive auteur projects, starting with Mickey 17. They also have Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which cost $90 million. They have Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, which they're saying costs $140, but other people are saying it could be as expensive as $200 now with kind of reshoots and various things. And then they have Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride at $80 million. And it's not just big budgets, it's also director-friendly contracts, because part of the deal for Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which is this big, hip, historical horror movie, is that ownership of the movie will revert to Coogler after 25 years. So they are giving auteurs lots of money. They are giving them friendly contracts. So my question is, what's going on here? What's the strategy? And before I get your take, Joe, I want to give just a tiny bit of context, because this is also the first year at Warner Brothers that the new regime of their film division, led by Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdy, are fully in charge of the slate since they took over back in the summer of 2022 after Warner Brothers and Discovery merged. Because up until this point, they could say, you know, when a movie flopped, well, that wasn't our movie. That was the previous regime's movie. So they had like they, you know, inherited a lot of the like weak, you know, DC movies before the James Gunn regime. So in 2023, they had, you know, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom. They also had Barbie and Wonka, which I'm sure they were happy to take credit for. But they were able in the past 2 years to kind of step away from responsibility because, you know, oh, Joker, Folie à Deux, that wasn't our project. We didn't have anything to do with that. But now this year, they are fully in charge. This is their signature slate. They are on the clock. So my question is, Joe, let's focus on this auteur-driven slate. What are they doing here with all these expensive auteur projects? What is the vision? What is the purpose? And what would success look like to them?
I think that this is great for film goers. Obviously, we want these wonderful directors to have big budgets. But do you know what I think that Warner Brothers is doing right now, Brett, with their auteur strategy? They're treading water. They are buying time. Next year, we will have Dune 3. We will have another Godzilla movie. We will have Superman 2. We will get all the IP back from Warner Brothers. That being said, I do like the couple of projects that they have in the pipeline. Here's the glass half full take. Warner Brothers needs a differentiator. They're in serious debt. Christopher Nolan has left them. Netflix is eating theirs and everybody's lunch, and Warner Brothers got problems. They got problems well beyond movies, linear television, the collapse of basketball programming. Basically, Zaslav's entire tenure has been predicated on a a private equity mindset. Is that what that?
I don't know. That sounds right.
You know, just stripping everything for parts and
Right.
managing the destruction. And honestly, his plan is getting them out of debt. That being said, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
He brought in his new people to do movies, Michael and Pamela. And I love the slate, Brett. I love the
It's
PTA
great for
budget.
us. It's great for us.
I love the Bong.
We're not complaining. I'm just curious,
These are people, think about the people. These are people that you're going to keep in your pipeline. All right, Mickey 17 didn't light the world on fire. I'd keep Bong Joon-ho around. The guy's making sci-fi originals at the drop of a hat. Okja's kind of a Mickey 17-esque thing too. Paul Thomas Anderson, he's pretty good at making movies.
He's pretty good at making movies.
Coogler, the collective they, Hollywood owes him like 7 originals. The guy's just been crushing, making everybody fucking rich.
Cranking out Creeds
and Black Panthers. Just cranking.
Yeah.
And then they have another, do you remember the other?
Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride.
And then Gyllenhaal's The Bride. That's a Frankenstein movie. Like, these aren't bad bets. The prices do seem really high to me, and just based on Warner Brothers' recent history of stinking at business,
Yes.
this is giving me like big time nerves. But I don't think this is like Michael and Pamela lose their job territory. I think the plan is tread water, stress a differentiator, try to get some goodwill. We know we have to just like burn time because next year we got 700 IP.
And you mentioned Christopher Nolan. I think there's a lot. I think Nolan's shadow is hanging over this a lot because I think Nolan used to be a Warner Brothers loyalist, do all his movies out of Warner Brothers, and then
Legendary's buildings were on and in the Warner Brothers lot.
That's right. And then famously, there was a big messy divorce there because Nolan didn't like their sort of streaming first strategies and not cutting down on theatrical releases, simultaneously releasing everything on Max. What Zaslav infamously called Operation Popcorn. Well, Operation Popcorn lost you Christopher Nolan, so I guess it was a Bay of Pigs level a disaster as far as operations.
But streaming's
go.
Profitable, they say.
Sure, but you lost Christopher Nolan. You lost your big sort of like auteur auteur and tentpole together, which is what Warner Brothers wants. They still have Villeneuve and Dune, which is kind of in that model as well. But they want to, I think they're trying to restore the Nolan pipeline now and trying to restore them, return themselves to this position where they are thought of as a auteur friendly studio, as a place where auteurs can come and make big budget
but make
movies.
event features.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Because none of these are, Peter Kuber's day.
Great point.
These are big old movies. So
These are big swings.
It's a good point by you.
Big swings.
It's true.
And all of these movies, to be fair to Warner Brothers, were won in bidding wars. Like, it wasn't like they were the only ones who had this idea. They beat out Sony and Universal for the PTA movie, for the Ryan Coogler movie. The Bride, Maggie Gyllenhaal's movie, was originally at Netflix for $100 million and then went into turnaround because Netflix didn't want to shoot it in New York where Maggie Gyllenhaal wanted to shoot it. And so Warner Brothers said, we'll take that. So it's not like, they're the only ones that wanted these movies. They fought hard for these movies, and now they're trying to give them the budgets the directors need to realize the visions of these movies. And I think they're hoping that, they know that not every one of these movies is going to hit. I'm sure they're hoping that one of these movies hits, that one of these movies
they are
hits.
hoping that.
And then now, who knows, maybe Sinners hits, and then now they've got a real great relationship with Ryan Coogler moving forward. They know they give him a contract he likes, they give him the budget he wants. So, I obviously this is great for movie lovers. I don't think it's maybe as risky for Warner Brothers as it looks at first glance. They're going to lose money, but sometimes you got to lose money in order to restore reputation or build new reputations to find your new Christopher Nolan. Maybe they're hoping that just one of these 4 directors becomes their new Christopher Nolan, and then they call it a day.
Yeah, keep hoping.